Jesus, don't cry. You can rely on me, honey.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Welcome to another belated episode of the AxPx podcast. I'm your host, Sean DeRager. Thanks for being patient and waiting all this time. I know you've been waiting on pins and needles for a new show. Gonna clear up some business here, and then we'll move on with the show. I've been wanting to have like a co-host, kind of someone to bounce things off with, and I've been talking with Joey Avalos quite a bit, and I figured I'd extend the invitation to him to be kind of the resident co-host. So I got Joey.
Hello.
What's up, man?
What's going on, man? Yeah, I'm doing well. Living it up in Arizona and enjoying the fall weather of 80 degrees.
Awesome. Yeah, no, you can't complain.
Exactly.
Yeah. We're and I'm in Southern California, so it's we've been enjoying some nice weather too. You know, it's been dipping down in the 40s overnight, so I may have to cover up the citrus trees.
Oh yeah.
Other than that, doing pretty good. All right. Well, Joey, man, thanks for being the resident co-host, I guess.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Sean. I appreciate it.
We kind of have a lot in common. Like, we have a lot in common. We kind of are on this little philosophical journey around the same time, at the same point in our lives. We've known each other for quite a while, so it's kind of a good fit, to bounce things off you. So the thing is, like, every week, Joey will be joining us on the show. I may have interviews and stuff like that may take precedence over having Joey in the whole show. We'll see. I'm kind of just playing it by ear, but I have some interesting interviews that are hopefully taking shape. I'm trying to get a hold of a guy who has a paranormal. He's like a paranormal researcher, and he actually goes in to people's houses and sees it. Uses all his stuff and sees that there is a ghost and stuff like that. And he takes it very seriously. He actually operates on donations as opposed to charging people. So I was like, this guy seems like, the real deal. So I'm trying to line that up. We'll see how it goes. They haven't returned my emails, but I'm going to be persistent because that sounds fun. So, stuff like that. But Joey will be joining us, every week. And then, I guess we'll see where it goes from there, right?
For sure, man.
Awesome. This week we're talking about, healthy addictions. So we'll be going into that topic a little bit later. This week's show is brought to you by Deep Elm Records. I'll be showcasing a couple of their bands, recent releases. And then I'm, in the process of getting another sponsor for the show, and, it's Charming Beard Coffee. And they'll be doing a full launch on November 1st. You can go to charmingbeard.com and check them out. And they're kind of a small roaster. Disclaimer, it's my brother. His company. But I figured I'd give them a shout out, and it's really good. I got a couple bags, already, and it's like single origin small batch coffee. So it's good stuff if you're a coffee connoisseur. So I'll be hopefully able to say that the show is sponsored by them. He has partners, so I'm letting him clear it up with them. But, I don't require anything. I'm just going to say, I want to promote the coffee because it's good stuff. So, and hopefully, with the sponsorship will be some sort of like discount. If you listen to the show and you buy coffee and put in some sort of discount code maybe or something like that. So, I know it's all the house cleaning I got. So, let's see here. Let's jump into the news. Yeah. Joey, can you hear the music when I play it?
Yeah, I can.
Awesome. All right. Yes, it's cheesy. Bear with me. It's all right. I don't care. I don't feel right like talking about news without having some sort of news music playing underneath. All right. Well, the first thing I want to chat about, and this is the week since I have been pushing things off for the show, and the news might be a little bit dated, I guess, but the stuff that I've been wanting to talk about. So we'll talk about this. First up, a Bible Belt Christian pretends to be gay. Timothy Kurick pretended to be gay for about a year just to see what the response would be, and what the kind of struggles they have. And I thought that was insanely interesting. Let's see if I can play a
Why
clip.
should our wallets tell us
Ah,
what
shoot. Hold on.
our favorite
Stupid
color
ads.
is? Every room.
YouTube ads, man. I just
Yeah, I
wanna
love
play a
them.
clip here. Before they, play this clip, I'm waiting for the stupid ad to go through. What do you think about what this guy did, Joey? What's your take on it?
I mean, I don't know the guy personally,
Yeah.
but I'm kind of surprised that he was surprised. I don't know what he was really trying to aim for. That
Right.
Coming up from a very conservative, almost like fundamental upbringing, that what their response were, like his family members and friends and loved ones. So I'm kind of baffled on the point. I don't know if it's really about the article's really about his surprise that he's reaction, but
Yeah.
more about his understanding of maybe his theology or his ideology is, maybe a little skewed, and he might need to change it because
Yeah.
he has a different look on the matter.
Well, let's listen to. I have this pulled up here. This is an interview with him, and we'll just I'll just play this and we'll see where it goes.
Days 5 to 7 Eastern.
So I'm curious, how did your family react when you revealed, when you first of all told them that you were gay, and then you came back and revealed that you really weren't? Did they feel deceived at all? Were they angry with you?
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, that was the hardest part of this for me. When I came out to my brother and my sister-in-law, they're the first people I came out to, and it was early January of 2009. I was so unnerved by the experience, I went outside and threw up. It was the first time I'd become physically sick because of my nerves. My family acted as lovingly as they could. They were held captive, though, to the same mindset that I was, and they didn't know how to handle having a gay son or a gay brother. My mom even wrote in her journal the day that I came out that she would rather have been told that she had terminal cancer than have a gay son. However, I have to say this. She did come around. She's an ally of the LGBT community now, and one of the most gracious women I've ever met. So she learned a lot from the process as well.
Tell me what made you do this.
I had a friend who I had known for a short while who came out of the closet to me and told me that her parents had disowned her brutally. And so in the process of that, my reaction wasn't much more loving than her parents. And as she left that situation at karaoke where she told me, I had this epiphany that the voice inside my head telling me that I needed to preach at her and try to convert her wasn't God. It was this spiritual programming inside of me from 2 decades inside the hyper-conservative Christian church.
So has your interpretation of the Bible actually changed on homosexuality?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I don't think there's any other way at this point that I could look at Scripture. I look at it more contextually than literally now. So.
All right, so that's a little news clip there explaining it, and I almost think that maybe some Christian circles need this type of thing. He's actually wrote his experience down and made a book called "The Cross and the Closet," and I just think it's really interesting that he did that. And I'll post a link to the story in the show notes here. And do you think the Christian community is so blinded by this that they needed this type of thing to shake things up, or do you what?
Yeah, my opinion on it is that when you say Christian community, it depends on what Christians you're talking about.
Right.
I've learned through my studies and just understanding other people's beliefs and how think about how many different denominations there are, and they all say that they have the right one, the right interpretation of God's word. And, and I've been actually fascinated. This might bring up into another segment about Jesus' wife story that you've been wanting to talk about.
Right.
I've been fascinated with this. Back in 1985, a group of scholars that created this thing called the Jesus Seminar, and about liberal Christians, which they disbanded not too long ago. But anyways, to say that, to put all Christians in one category, it would be kind of, I think some need it, but I don't know if it's completely, it's hard to tell how effective it is, because it depends on, I think a lot has to do with personality and how open people are to change. Because you could tell someone blue in the face if they completely believe in something, no matter what, even this or, deception a little bit, and prove that, they're, that they might be ignorant into their ideology, who knows? It may just be a case by case basis, still, even with this, I'm sure Christians are saying like, I don't, it doesn't change how I feel. So I think it might be a case by case, situation.
Yeah. Cool. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to actually checking out his book. I'll definitely check it out and
for sure,
and see where it goes. All right, next up on our list of news here, like you briefly mentioned here, that so there was a documentary about the whole Jesus wife papyrus that was found. That documentary's been delayed because they found a typo in the text. And a religious scholar they doubt the veracity of the papyrus text because he says that it has a typo in there. So because of that, they're saying that possibly this is a fake based on a typo. So, for those of you, kind of new to this issue, there was a small little fragment that was quote unquote found, that said in the text that Jesus had a wife. I'm looking for the translation. Now, all it says is, Jesus said to them, my wife, ... That's really all it says. So this guy named, trying to find his first name here, his last name's Goodacre, Mark Goodacre, says that my personal view on this fragment, if I had to put money on it, is that I'm pretty sure the papyrus is fake. I could be wrong, and that's only a provisional judgment since we've only known about this for a month, and now I think now it's been a little over a month. But the documentary was slated to air on September 30th, but on the Smithsonian channel, but it's been delayed. So,
of course. Well, what's interesting is that I've been kind of following a blog that we always talk about, Bart Ehrman, biblical scholar, and he's been keeping us updated about the process and all of, or what the scholars are actually looking at and what they're doing. And what is interesting, I think, is that, first of all, the reason why they were skeptical in the beginning is just how relevant the actually text was, what it was saying my wife, but you got this little credit card. I mean, imagine a credit card papyrus.
It's tiny.
And what is the possibilities that it actually says this, and they find it, so that's always gives you, red alarm right there. But on top of that, what is interesting, what Bart said would be interesting is that more likely what happened is like there was a Gospel of Thomas back in 1997 that had the same typo. There was this line, and it basically says that whoever wrote this didn't understand how to write Coptic because it's a grammatical error. But in the Gospel of Thomas, this is actually just a typo.
Right.
Okay. Well, but with this case is that, so if they date it, more than likely it can't be older than 1997. But what would be interesting is that if they test the ink, which, I'm not sure where they're on that because they don't want to ruin anything because we have little of nothing from
I think to test the ink, they have to destroy it, right? If they're going to do like any sort of carbon dating.
Right. And the thing is, but what would be interesting, what Bart says, he goes, he thinks it's a fake, almost all scholars, they think it's a fake, whatever. But what would be interesting if the ink does date pre-1997, because what he would say, in a sense, he goes, it doesn't prove anything. It just proves that maybe someone that, in the past just didn't really know how to write Coptic and made a mistake. It doesn't prove anything. It just would be interesting in the fact that the ink is older than 1997, which everyone would think is going to be 1997 and further on, So.
Well, what strikes me is just the discussion that out of this small little story, someone saying, hey, I found this huge discussion of like, what does it mean if Jesus had a wife? What do you think? And it was like, it rippled through the religious community and it's just amazing that even the hint that Jesus possibly had a wife is a big deal to certain people, which me, like, I could care less. It's just fine. If he had a wife, he had a wife. It doesn't make the words,
right.
The words that the New Testament quotes him as saying any less poignant. You know what I mean? He still said a lot of interesting things. So, it's just pretty funny how a small discovery like this can just, can create such a huge dent in in our society and the discussion,
Oh, for sure. And I think also on touching base on what I was saying earlier, there's some very liberal scholars that always still they can't prove it, but they have a belief that Jesus had a wife. And the main reason where they bring their evidence from is that through the Gospels, that in each gospel, there's the only woman that is always consistently is Mary Magdalene, the one from Da Vinci Code, So that's always, crazy. But the thing is, at the very end, they said, the last gospel, when she, she thinks she's talking to the gardener and asks where his body is and if she could retrieve it. Well, there's a scholar named John Spong. He's the ex-bishop, very liberal from the Jesus Seminar, which we could do a whole different story on this. I think you'd find it fascinating if you haven't done any research on them. But on the fourth gospel, he says back in Jewish culture, a woman that asks to retrieve a body is unconceivable unless they are the next of kin. So making a statement in a gospel saying, hey, where's the body so I can retrieve it is basically if any woman in Judea or Palestine back then, would be able to say that, it would be it's just not thought of, it's like blasphemy in a sense, so the only way they could do that is that she was his wife. So, I mean, it's thin, but it's how people interpret the scripture.
It's interesting, and we weren't there. We don't know.
Oh, exactly.
All right, moving along here. A couple more things to discuss here. Billy Graham is taking heat for taking the word cult off of Mormonism on his website. Mm-hmm. After he met with Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney, it's just a lot of LDS writers and bloggers are kind of finding it kind of humorous, but a lot of people on the evangelical side, such as Reverend Samuel Wynn, he's a Methodist minister. He said, I will never again support anything by the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. And then he says, my question to Billy Graham is, what's more important for the kingdom of God, politics or the message of Jesus Christ? So he's taking heat for basically not calling Mormonism a cult anymore, which before he met with Mitt Romney, it said on his website, and it said in there, in any material you can find about Mormonism on the Billy Graham side, is that they did reference it as a cult. So, pretty interesting, political move for them, but for Billy Graham. But for me, it's not really, that shocking, because Billy Graham is very much a political, he's very much influenced by politics and stuff like that, because he always ends up meeting with the presidents and stuff like that. So.
And how much do you believe that's really Billy Graham? Do you think it might be his son? What I'm saying? Like Franklin Graham, actually, because how old is Billy Graham now? 98 or something like that?
Probably, I would guess maybe Franklin Graham. Of course, everything gets attributed to Billy Graham, but I think Franklin Graham's pretty much taken over that ministry.
Right.
So, anyway, another thing, something that I consider small, taking heat, by the evangelical side of things, and, people taking, but that's the thing. I really need to do a Mormonism show. I actually have a cousin who is a Mormon, and I've been wanting to, to have him on the show to discuss Mormonism, but I also want to have someone else who's not a Mormon also. I don't know, but then you got 2 against 1. Because for me, Mormonism is a huge example of a modern religion kind of taking form based off a con man, is it Jeremiah? Was it Jeremiah Wright?
Jeremiah Wright? You mean the president's? No. Was that the
the guy who started it? I can't remember.
Oh, Joseph Smith.
Joseph Smith. Jeremiah Wright. Joseph Smith. The names start with a J. Yeah, but you finding these tablets, these bronze tablets, and that nobody ever saw, and he's the only one who can translate them. They, basically that's how they created the Book of Mormon, and, it's all suspect to me, but I really, want to, have a show dedicated to Mormonism, so we'll do it, and I'll be on my best behavior. I kind of want them to answer like, okay, here's the perception, what do you think? How do you explain it? And then I just want to kind of let that go, and, cause this show is really not about being confrontational to people, I want to have the discussion, and just cause I don't know a lot about it, I don't know how people can, I just don't understand how they can see this as just an additional book to the Bible when it's very much, a lesser book,
Right.
So, all right, moving on there. I don't have too much else to say about that unless you do.
With the Billy Graham thing too, I believe, and I could be wrong on this, I think he actually took all the different religions that they considered cult off. Like it was under like a thing called My Answer.
Oh, okay.
So I think Mormonism was part of it, but I think you just removed the whole page or information on that page.
Okay. So, so maybe they think Scientology is not people can say that maybe they think Scientology is, Billy Graham doesn't think Scientology is a cult anymore.
Right. And I could be wrong on that, but I thought I read somewhere around that. So
yeah. Well, it's funny because the original article that I was citing here in my notes, disappeared, and it was it was a Christian website, and it just disappeared.
Oh, well, that's brilliant.
All right. All right. And finally, there's a science article I found really, interesting. It says that living longer comes easier. Human longevity, largely a modern phenomenon. So, I'm going to read a little bit of this. A new study finds that humans are living so much longer today compared with the rest of human history that the probability of dying at 72 is similar to the death odds our ancestors likely faced at 30. So, let's see. An evolutionary anthropologist, Oscar Berger, and his team wanted to study human longevity in an evolutionary context, so they turned to previous gathered data on chimpanzees, hunter-gatherer societies in parts of Africa and South America, and numbers from the human mortality database for Japan, Sweden, and France. So there's a longer article here. You can read about it. But I thought that was interesting. You don't really talk about longevity too much, or I don't really talk about it too much, with friends and family. I mean, we just had a couple, we've had a few grandparents, my wife's grandparents, pass away recently, and they're in their 70s. So I don't see anyone living any longer, in my kind of sphere of family and stuff. But what do you think about this data? Do you think that, we can start seeing people live longer and longer, or?
Well, it all depends on what science you're talking about. I definitely have some friends that work in the biology of creating, in a sense, the quote unquote, what we call immortality of basically, regenerating genes and displacements of, like, say, if you have a bad liver or whatever, to be able to to bring biology back into it, to be able to actually formulate the cells and to regenerate yourself, almost like when a lizard loses its tail or whatever, which I find fascinating science. I'm not even going to try to talk about it like I know what I'm talking about, but I find the whole, science on that is very intriguing, at least, even if it's never comes into fruition in our lifetime. But I believe, with what we've accomplished through the thousands of years, I just think we can actually maybe possibly see some great things, with science, with helping people. I think what's going to come to a head is how that science is going to come to, with already stem cell research and stuff like that. How is it going to come ahead with the religious, what we quote unquote the right, of religion, of will they allow this kind of science to take place, or what will happen? Will the majority overrule them one day and be able to bring the science to reality?
Here's what I was thinking about the other day. Because people are saying, like, in the future we may be immortal. Like, immortality could be, to an extent, be an actual reality. Right. But it's like, well, if you're looking at the Earth as, like, if you're looking at the Earth in evolutionary terms, it's like that's going to cause a whole kink, the whole, in the whole system, because if we're living forever or even longer, and more people are being born every day, we're going to overrun our already dwindling natural resources, and then that possibly maybe immortality isn't such a good thing for the longevity of the planet.
Yeah, it's interesting, man, because I talked to my friend that's actually working on this panel, and I brought up the same thing. I'm on, what about food and stuff? And he's like, the way he brings it, he goes, man, I live in the heart of New York City. He goes, and he goes, I'm just amazed to the point that when I wake up in the morning by 6 a.m. and I go down to the corner deli or shop, that I can get this exotic fruit that is fresh off a plane. They managed to get this here, and I'm just more amazed by the power of the human condition that we will find a way to make things work.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion. I mean, what would be the cost of immortality? Would it, could it actually be a negative impact? It'd be interesting to.
I always worry about, the power of in the wrong hands. There has to be some kind of system that so one certain higher power, the people that have the most money, will have this power over the people, and now we just have a different hierarchy.
Yeah.
Science fiction,
Good stuff.
man. Come
Good
on.
stuff. All right. That's gonna do it for the news. The news this week. Some interesting stuff, and I'll have all these links on the show notes for you to check out, and you can read these. Let's jump into our first musical break. The music today comes from Deep Elm Records, and you can check them out at deepelm.com. This first band is called The Skylife. They have a new album. It's coming out soon. It's either out right now or coming out very soon. I couldn't in the press release they didn't actually have a release date. But the new album's called Canvas, and the song I'm going to play for you right now is called Granville. You're listening to the AxPx podcast. I'll be back right after this. And that was The Skylife with the song Granville from the album Canvas, out on Deep Elm Records. You can check them out at deepelm.com. I think earlier I may have said deepelmrecords.com. It's actually deepelm.com. And check them out. Check out all their bands, and good stuff. A lot of good stuff from Deep Elm Records. They were one of my favorite record labels. One of my favorite bands called the Appleseed Cast was on that label. And, they're always looking for good, interesting stuff. So, all right, well, let's jump into this week's discussion. And, the title of this week's discussion is Healthy Addiction? The question mark. And and I want to preface this by, I know that, addiction, like normal addiction to like drugs and things like that is a very serious subject. But, I never have really struggled with substance addiction. I haven't really known too many people who have, so I don't have that expertise and to even jump into that topic. And so I wanted to get it out there like, hey, the topic of addiction is a serious topic. The reason why I wanted to talk about this, like healthy addiction and I'm, curious, like, is it actually healthy? Is just because you hear people every single day, like, oh, I'm addicted to, white chocolate macadamia nut cookies. I just can't get enough. Or, I'm addicted to Starbucks coffee, and things like that. You hear it kind of used loosely, in a certain, for many people, they throw this out. And, some people are addicted to exercise and things like that, where so I wanted to just kind of throw this out there. And I'll get my personal, I have my own personal stuff here in a second here, but the first question here is like, is there such thing as a healthy addiction? Like what are your thoughts on it, Joey? Like, have you even thought about that before?
Yeah.
What do you think just generally,
honestly,
like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, my general thoughts on it, it's almost a contradiction. It is a contradiction in my mind. 'Cause, if you really look at what an addiction is, it is a disease. And I don't know if a healthy disease is actually, is anything, So I think when you say healthy addiction, like eating right, working out, doing all that stuff, what should we consider, healthy? I think it to any extreme to say it's an addiction or not, which we can go into a little bit too. But I would say in those regards of like eating healthy and doing stuff, could be healthy addictions, but I think it's the wrong terminology. Like I think they're using the word addiction in the wrong place, Now,
the reason why I started thinking about this topic was because I couldn't find the stinking article when I tried looking for it again here, but on Facebook, one of my friends, put some sort of article that talked about like people on their phones and the whole main of the article was like, look, I came here to hang out with you. Put away your damn phone,
Right.
And I started thinking about that because we live in a society now where we have our phones and stuff like that, in our hands all the time. And people like me who, like, I'll find myself just always checking my phone. And my wife, it drives her crazy. And she's always getting on my case, very rightly so, about the stinking phone,
Right.
And so we're living in a society where people are being drawn to checking their Facebook, checking their Twitter all the time. And you see people in groups, like people be at a party and half the people are just staring at their phones. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And I was like, well, with my personality, why am I always checking my phone? Is it becoming a bad habit or is it an addiction? You know what I mean? And, So that's what kind of started me thinking about this. And I've actually been trying to, make it a point to not be on my phone as much. It is a hard habit to break because for some reason, I don't know if it's, because, my circle of friends is spread across the U.S. So I always want to see what they're up to. And it's kind of, you're constantly connected, you're constantly connected to people that are very similar to you, but they may not be in the same room as you. I don't know if it's that, like the need for, validation of a thought or whatever. So I was thinking about that. Am I addicted to my phone? And then, I'm a movie collector and I'm constantly buying movies and buying Blu-rays and always thinking about, and, it almost can, if I let it go and didn't have my wife who was kind of trying to keep me in check and everything, it almost could be a very unhealthy thing. This whole, wanting to buy movies, new movies are coming out. I got movies on DVD that I want to swap out for the Blu-ray. Sometimes if I'm having a bad day, it makes me feel better just to go out and buy something, buy a movie and I like looking through movies and stuff like that. So I was like, well, am I addicted to buying movies? Things like that. So, are these personality traits, addiction? And it's funny whenever people are asking me about it, I'm always like, well, at least I'm not addicted to heroin. At least this is and I've said it before, this is a healthy addiction. Yeah. I'm not, but if you look at it, how much does a Blu-ray cost? And it's funny because on Twitter, you even kind of called me on it. You're like, how much do you spend per month? And I'm like, oh, I don't spend too much a month. And then I sat down, I added up everything that I bought, and it had been, maybe $300 to $400 just in 1 month on movies. And my wife she watch a movie every now and then, but she's not watching all these, right? It's not like it's a shared experience. And, so it's like, if I let this go and didn't have someone to keep me in check, this possibly could spiral into some sort of addiction, Right. So I have some definitions of addiction here. So we'll see. Maybe by the end of the podcast, we'll see if I have an addiction or not. So we got a few different dictionaries that this came from. So it looks at the dictionary.com, which I'm guessing is the I don't know what dictionary they'd be looking into, but it says a state of being enslaved to a habit or practice or to something that is psychologically or physically habit forming as narcotics to such an extent that its cessation causes severe trauma. So that's the dictionary.com, which I'm guessing would be Webster's. Then there's the World English Dictionary that says the condition of being abnormally dependent on some habit, especially compulsive dependency on narcotic drugs. And there's the Medical Dictionary. It says that habitual, psychological, and physiological dependence on a substance or practice beyond one's voluntary control. And then the Science Dictionary says a physical or psychological need for habit-forming substance, such as drugs or alcohol. In physical addiction, the body adapts to the substance being used and gradually requires increased amounts to reproduce the effects originally produced by smaller doses. See more at withdrawal. Or number 2, it says habitual or compulsive involvement in activity such as gambling. So it says gambling, but
right. So
there's two sides, and the whole thing is that when we speak about addiction, we're always thinking about the substance addiction. So I'm reading this and I'm like, well, if I had nothing holding me back, I could definitely see myself being addicted to, buying movies or addicted to, coffee. I always have to have coffee every day. What do you think about that? Do you have any habits that you would say could possibly be some sort of addiction or?
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because I think as myself as an individual, I'm very OCD, not to the point that like I check the door to make sure it's locked 20 times before I leave or anything, but to the point that I'm very ritual. Basically my day is exactly the same. I live Groundhog's Day. And I'm easily to be able to, my personality is I can get obsessed with stuff. If something interests me, I'm not just going to put my toe in the water. I'm just going to dive blindly into it, Uh-huh. So I have that kind of personality. So to the point of addiction stuff, I think more than anything, I think we're all, in a sense, probably a lot of people do, with food. Because, you know, I'm sure you read into some addictions of studies on addiction where, you know, I just read a recent article, in the, what's it called? The NIH, basically the National Health Institute of Health. You know, and they're talking about the effects of, you know, it's a disease, an addiction, a disease that affects the brain and the behavior. But there's also, you know, on the other side of it, the addiction, you know, behavioral addictions are usually non-chemical, you know. But it's also in what their studies, you know, neurologically is that there's that reward part of our brain that, you know, it's almost like, you know, you get into the maze and you get your, you know, you're a mouse going through the, through the maze and you get your reward at the end, like cheese. And it's almost like you with the Blu-rays, you know, your reward is a Blu-ray, you know, and it triggers that sensation of like, you know, feeling good about yourself or feeling good, you know, and it's interesting because you bring that up and I hope you can interject to that too, because this is really talking like for you and with us too, because I'm always on my iPad. I'm always researching, reading. So the technology, you know, quote unquote technology addiction, and what you think about, you know, have you read anything about that?
Well, I mean, I know that like with certain behaviors and things like that, there is kind of a chemical released in your brain if you. I've read things like that, you know, but I can only really speak to like personal like experience because I've read things. And then I've actually experienced it where, you know, having a really, really bad day. Well, you know, this is a really weird, this is really weird. I mean, this is getting personal, but when my brother-in-law died, it was a huge impact on our, you know, to the whole, our lives. And like, it seemed like, you know, the one thing that I had was my, you know, buying movies. So like, it seems really superficial, I guess. It sounds stupid talking about it, but I ended up like, during that week, I just went to Best Buy and just found things that I wanted to somehow make me feel better. And I'm sure that if I had like a substance abuse problem, I probably would have turned to that. But because I didn't, I turned to the one thing that always made me feel better to try to get it to make me feel better, you know? And it sounds really stupid, like talking about it, you know? Because I don't know, it just doesn't seem like that would be should be high on someone's priority list, you know, if they have a family member, you know, pass away tragically. But for some reason, that was one. I mean, I think I tried, you know, I tried to see, you know, maybe this will make me at least temporarily feel better. And then what I found myself doing was I found myself, you know, maybe this was just a state of grief too, but I found myself trying to find movies that he liked, you know, and buying those and trying to get as many of those as I could so I can watch those and try to have, you know, spend a little bit of time with them. So, you know, I mean, so and then there's days where I've had like a bad day at work and, this movie's out, I'm gonna go buy it. And then I temporarily feel better. There's like almost a chemical reaction, like a sense of like ease kind of goes over my body where it's like, you know, it's really, like really strange. So this obviously there's something there. Right. You know, and since like I said, I don't have the experience of an actual substance abuse problem, which is insanely serious. I mean, think like if I was, you know, addicted to like, I don't know, like a drug or something like that, and I had a bad day, I would turn to that. So, you know, it's kind of, you know, yeah, you know what, this is a healthier addiction. You know, I guess you can say that, you know, but yeah, it's a very interesting thing, and I don't really have all the answers, but you know, and I would say if you're listening to this right now and you have something to contribute to the conversation, I would love to hear, your thoughts on it, and, you can send me an email. It's Sean, SEAN, at theaxpx.com, or you can go to the Facebook page, which is facebook.com/theaxpx, and let us know, like, your, you know, what you think about this, because I think that, you know, people like us, since we haven't really been through a serious addiction, we're kind of scratching the surface, and it's a very surface level look at addiction, you know, so.
Right. You know, and I think with you, Sean, not to get too personal on that stuff, but like, you know, or try to analyze your situation. But I mean, what rings to me from an outsider is like, honestly, at the beginning, you know, it's a coping mechanism, you know, of a huge change in your life. And then on top of it, if I recall, you know, the relationship you had, with him, it was you guys were fanatics with movies.
Right.
You know, that's what you had in common. So, I mean, it makes complete sense that you would go there, you know, with that to definitely, in a sense, hold his memory or make it feel like he hasn't, you know, passed on, you know, and I totally understand where that goes. And I think the third thing you said, you know, really holds true. And I think maybe that's a part of cognitive dissonance going on with most people that say, well, it's a healthier addiction than this, you know, because basically, you know, if you use the word addiction and we use it loosely, but if it really is an addiction, then it is a disease. And if it is a disease, then it's not good for you. So what we do is, you know, it's, you know, we didn't really talk about this too. I just got back from a seminar, or actually more of a discussion at ASU. It's called The Great Debate on Deception. It was moderated by a theoretical physicist, Lawrence Krauss, and he had a bunch of neurological scientists there, and also evolutionary social psychologists, and just how we deceive ourselves. Like a smoker, you know, a smoker knows the harms of a cigarette, you know, and they go through that process every single time to smoke. But what they have to do when they meet their logic, when there's something contradicts their logic, they have to convince themselves that it's okay to smoke the cigarette. Even though the chemicals are, very addictive, but still the process of smoking the cigarette, knowing the facts that this could harm you or eventually kill you, you know, we all go through that. And we all do it. I mean, we're all, you know, that's how we kind of the survival of, you know, of logically when we hit something that doesn't make sense, or we try to feel like, because we're self-awareness, you know, the self-awareness of us, we want to be right. We don't want to be wrong. So if there's anything that we're doing, we're not going to automatically tell ourselves that we're doing something wrong, you know, or this is bad, because we don't want to be that person to, you know, it's really hard for someone to say I'm wrong, or to humble themselves and say, you know, maybe I'm looking at this wrong, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Let's see. I think let's see here. So yeah, so I think what we can say is, like, you know, when people say that, oh, healthy addiction, we would probably say like healthier is probably the better term, maybe, or, but I wanted to read a section of an article here. It's called "A Radical New Definition of Addiction Creates a Big Storm." It's from alternet.org. And I'm trying to see when the thing was written. It was written a year ago, a little over a year ago, August 18th, 2011. And, let's see here. The first paragraph says, if you think addiction is all about booze, drugs, sex, gambling, food, and other irresistible vices, think again. And if you believe that a person has a choice whether or not to indulge in an addictive behavior, get over it. The American Society of Addiction Medicine blew the whistle on these deeply held notions with its official release of a new document defining addiction as a chronic neurological disorder involving many brain functions, most notably a devastating imbalance in so-called reward circuitry. This fundamental impairment in the experience of pleasure literally compels the addict to chase the chemical highs produced by substances like drugs and alcohol and obsessive behaviors like sex, food, and gambling. The definition is the result of a 4-year process involving more than 80 leading experts in addiction and neurology. So the article goes, it gets pretty in depth here, but it was the kind of one of the first times, because I think this is the article that I was kind of talking about. I've read stuff like this, and it states it pretty well in here, but it's more talking about like bad behaviors, you know. Because originally you'd think that addiction is just like kind of substance, but there's a lot more going on in our brains. You know, it even says like bio, psycho, socio, spiritual illness.
Wow, yeah.
So it's a very good read. I'll put this article up in the show notes as well. But yeah, I mean, I think it's good to recognize that addiction, you know, either whether or not you think it's like a minor thing, there is addiction traits that you can, you know, jump into, you know, whether it's a habit or something like that. And I think it's, so I would say, I wouldn't say that there's a healthy addiction. I mean, there's people that get addicted to running or exercising, and that like consumes them. That is like all that they do and all that they can, it's like the only thing that makes them, you know, feel better, you know, to be working out, you know, for 3-4 hours a day, and it takes precedence over everything, over their family. It could get in the way of their job, things like that.
Right.
So, I guess that's how I look at an addiction, as something that can get in the way of, that's harmful, that can overtake everything in your life,
Yeah, it harms you, and not only if it doesn't even you feel like it harms yourself, but the people around you, especially your close ones,
Yeah, because if I kept buying movies, I was, we'd have no money to, feed the kids.
Right, exactly.
So, and I think it's good to have, in order not, for a personality like me, the things that I've done, even recently, I talked to my wife about this. I was like, look, you know what? I need a limit. You need to limit me, and you need to call me on it if I'm not staying in the limit. You need to help me. And I think it's good to have a good surrounding, a good, group of people surrounding you, like family or a spouse or something like that. If you're this kind of personality trait.
Well, it's interesting, Sean, and maybe this could be a last little discussion too on this stuff, like with your situation, like with buying movies, do you think it really matters the amount of movies you buy, or that you have to buy the movies? Because the reason why I say, what if you just bought one a month, or maybe one every 2 months?
But there's so many. There's so many that come out, Joey.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say. Is it really the amount, or is it that you have to? Like, you feel like if you don't buy this, you're gonna hurt yourself.
No, yeah, no. It's not necessarily amount, and it's funny because anyone with a habit or something that they love, you find reasoning to spend the money. And for me, it's like, okay, there's movies that I like, and then there's like, well, is it culturally relevant? And maybe it's like autobiographical. Like a movie comes out that I haven't seen in 20 years that makes me think of a fun time in my life. I'm going to want that. You know what I mean? Right. So yeah, it's not necessarily about building my numbers, because I don't care how many I have, and I have too many already. I mean, I'll never watch all these, but it almost feels good to kind of grab onto this piece of, I guess, of me. You know what I mean?
Right. No, that makes sense.
And to own it, and where there are a lot of people, they can just rent it and they're fine. But for me, for some reason, there's a compulsion to actually own the thing and tuck it away, or, a new version, a new edition comes out, yeah, it's not necessarily numbers. It's very much like autobiographical, or something that maybe, if my kids want to become filmmakers, I have this idea that someday they may want to be a filmmaker, and there's all these special features and all this stuff that they can watch and learn and grow,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. It's not necessarily a hoarding thing. But the thing is, like, it's something that I'm very much attached to. And if they were gone, it would it's like I said, like, this example as an addiction sounds so stupid. And there's someone who's like addicted to cigarettes that's saying, like, you guys are idiots,
Right. No, I understand.
But it's something like if they ever were gone or were stolen, or, it would, like, I would be depressed, and it's very sad to say that, but I would definitely maybe slip into depression.
I understand, man.
So, that's where I think, like, maybe I need to have this under control, cause, but, I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Well, no, I think you said it, man. You're just trying to find balance and everything. Yeah. The reason why I was saying that is, say, if you had all the money in the world, it didn't have to worry about, replacing this habit or whatever you want to call it to feed your kids, would you still consider this an addiction,
Yeah, probably. In that case, yes, probably. Yeah. Yeah. Because it's not necessarily about,
That's why I was saying, if it was the amount, like, oh, I gotta have this, or if you can't, like, wait for a while, like, look at the more traditional of addiction, that you have no control, but with a habit, you are in control of your choice in addiction. You can live, a month without even thinking about this. Yeah, you suck because you have this habit, but are you really addicted to these movies? And that's kind of was trying to understand your situation.
Yeah. And that's the funny thing too. It's not necessarily watching them, it's owning them, but like I said, like this could probably be like, these types of things could probably be more classified under possibly like a bad habit. It is
obsessed. Yeah. Almost like
an obsession. Yeah.
Obsession.
Not necessarily addiction. So, so I don't know if we can really I think we covered addiction and kind of we've defined it. And I would say that going through this information, I probably am not addicted. I probably, cause that's a thing that when people have talked to me about it, I'm like, it's like an addiction, even a new coworker of mine, he loves buying movies, and he even said this week, like, yeah, man, it's like an addiction. you know, which very well, it could possibly, maybe this habit could lead to addiction. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But, it's still something that can be managed. And,
Right.
you know, like for us, we're putting the reins on it. I get a certain amount every payday. That's what I got for the next 2 weeks, you know, and
Yeah.
if there's a, you know, save it if I hit whatever, save it and, you know, so it's manageable. So I would say that, you know what, after reading all this stuff that I've been reading all week and yeah, you know, I'm not an addict. I could become one, you know, if I, you know, let the habit get out of control. But, you know, I don't know. I think the word addiction should be limited to things that are actually serious. You know what I mean? As opposed to saying it's a healthy addiction. Cause I think addiction in itself is a major neuro, you know, can be a major neurological problem. You know, I think the term addiction should be limited to something that's actually serious and not be, you know, kind of thrown around like we do. And everyone throws around words that are, you know, more serious than they are. Or, you know.
Oh, hey, Sean, I'm starving right now. You know?
I love this cookie. I love it.
Yeah, exactly.
I love chocolate chip chunk cookies. Yeah. So anyway, you know, I hope, you know, all you who are listening, I hope you guys got something out of this. I would like to cover, you know, serious addiction, in a future show. And if it's something, if you're a listener and you actually struggled with addiction, I would love to talk to you about it as a good kind of balance to this, you know, to this subject. It'd be good to bring this up with someone who's actually, you know, struggled with it and overcome it. I would love to talk to you. And if that's you and you're listening and you want to share your story, definitely hit me up, Sean, SEAN, at theaxpx.com. You know, we'd love to delve into that subject as well. So, all right, I'm going to play, our second band here before we leave. This band is called the Dandelion War, and the song is called Drifters. It's from the album We Were Always Loyal to Lost Causes. It's a 7-minute song, so sit back, have some coffee, and just relax and listen to the song. It's a good song. And we'll be back right after this. You're listening to the AxPx podcast. That was the Dandelion War with Drifters from the album We Were Always Loyal to Lost Causes. And that's going to do it for this week's show. Joey, man, thanks for co-hosting it, man. I think we bounce well off each other, and it's going to be good stuff.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. Hopefully, you feel better, completely get over your illness, and we can do this more regularly.
I know. So I don't know when exactly the next show will be. I'm hoping within in a week, and I'm working on a few things. We'll see what happens. But, hopefully next week, the show will be brought to you by Charming Beard Coffee. But in the meantime, you can go to charmingbeard.com, check out their selection. They have 2 roasts available now. There's a Nicaraguan and an Ugandan. They're actually very good. Their official launch is November 1st, but I think you can order coffee from their website right now. And if you live in the Salt Lake City, Utah area, you can find their coffee at Tony Caputo's Market and Deli. And if, tell them that you heard about them on the AxPx podcast. Yeah. Also the show brought to you by Deep Elm Records. Make sure you check out this week's bands, The Skylife and the Dandelion War. Order the music, both digital and vinyl and CDs and all that stuff from deepelm.com. All right, Joey, I'll talk to you next week, man. Thanks again.
Yeah, well, thank you. Have a good one.
All right, and all of you listening, have a great week. I'll talk to you guys next week. You can find me, we gotta plug our Twitters. You can find me on Twitter at theaxpx. I also have a Blu-ray, podcast. You can follow that Twitter. It's a Geek Couch. You can find that at thegeekcouch.com/podcast if you want to hear me talk about my movie obsession. And Joey, you're on Twitter, right?
Yes, I am. Just simple, my name, Joey, Joey, last name, Avalos, Avalos.
Awesome. And of course, you can find the show on Facebook. Like us, facebook.com/theaxpx. All right. All of you have a great week, and we'll talk to you very soon. Bye.